now. Yeah, so as I say, welcome to our preview of the Rise Female Leadership Report in partnership with the KTN. I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming you all here today. We have got an action-packed session for you over the next hour. But before we kick off, I just wanted to say thank you to our partner, the KTN, who have helped work with us on this report, and actually Daisy Chapman-Chamberlain, who has actually authored the report and also works at the KTN. Yeah, huge thanks to her for all of her work on this. She's done an incredible job. And once the report is officially live on Thursday, I will circulate that to you, and hopefully you can see all of her brilliant work and yeah, just a testament to all. Yeah, just say thank you to her. And Daisy, I think are you on here? I can't.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Daisy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Daisy, for all of your work. And would you just like to just do a quick introduction to the KTN and the organisation, just so everybody here knows a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I'm Daisy Chapman-Chamberlain, so I'm the rail lead at KTN. And I really hope you find the report, once we obviously release it, really useful. So for context, KTN exists to amplify and guide innovation in the UK, and globally as well. So we connect people, ideas and communities to respond to all sorts of different challenges of all sorts of sizes, and drive positive change through innovation. So we work with business, government, funders and the third sector, and we have teams in everything from digital to water, defence to transport and beyond. So a really, really wide range of industries working across. And we really understand, and we're working to support and build the value of diversity and inclusive leadership in driving innovation in all of those industries. So we're really pleased to be involved in this amazing piece of work. And I'll hand back over to Carrie.
Yeah, thank you, Daisy. And Daisy's going to be online for this session, so if you have any questions for her, please do put them in the chat as we go through the session. And then I also just wanted to say a huge thank you to Stephanie Popsecue and Peggy Reichman, who are also on the call today, who were the initial instigators of this report, kind of working on the survey back in early 2021, pulling together all the questions that many of you might have responded to, actually. So Peggy and Steffi, huge thanks to you as well. And I know you're both online to answer some questions as we go through the session. So moving on to our agenda then. So we'll introduce our 4 panelists in a second, but we're also going to be covering some of the central themes today that have come out through the report. And the headlines of these are imposter syndrome, risk-taking, mentoring and board representation, and education. So we're going to cover those 4 central themes throughout this discussion, and then we'll run an open Q&A at the end, and then wrap up in about an hour's time. So let's move on then. Let's introduce our panelists. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by 4 amazing women today. We have Meghan Ross, who is the Rise North American Chair and also the Senior Global Technology Manager at Brightcove. Jill Porubovic, I'm trying to get the surname pronounced right, who's the founder and owner of Jill Porubovic Consulting. And then we're also joined by Hilary Roschke, who's the Director of Strategic Operations at SDVI Corporation. And finally, lastly, Magda Jagucka, sorry Magda, I probably got your surname pronounced wrong as well. Thank you. Who's the Vice President and Localization Operations at Deluxe. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to get straight into the conversation then. So the first finding that we have around imposter syndrome, we're going to start with this central theme. And this statistic might be surprising or it might not be, but we have found in our report that 75% of the women that responded to our report said that they have imposter syndrome, when 25% of them didn't. So I was quite surprised actually that the statistics of those that didn't, that 25% was as high as it was, but I'm quite keen to get your perspective on this. Magda, should we start with you? Does this statistic surprise you or not? And also, do you have imposter syndrome yourself?
That's a really, really good question. I think the statistic is not really surprising, to be honest. I expected that there will be even a high number, of women responding, saying that they do have the imposter syndrome. Personally, I think I do have it, although it's more of a mild case for me, specifically because really during my career, I'm naturally very curious. I do love to learn. I do love to experiment. And I haven't really felt that as much of I'm not enough, right? It's more of the level of confidence and the level of expertise and knowledge that have been more of like blockers in pursuing certain steps in my career so far. But I would say it's just really been a case of, trusting trusting in the experiences that I have, building the confidence upon some of the successes and some of the wins, some of the failures as well, reflecting upon them and learning from them that kind of have guided me through, through the time through the time in my career so far, and how I've experienced the imposter syndrome. There's definitely been occasions that I've held it more than others, but for the most part, I would say it's really experimenting, it's building that confidence, it's learning, it's searching within and talking to other people and patting yourself on the back and saying, hey, well done on this one, and then moving on.
Yeah, and Hilary, you're nodding away there. You agree with Magda on this one?
I do. Well, first of all, I think we need to congratulate these ladies who haven't experienced any. I think it's a wonderful, hopefully a marker for how things are progressing for people. I have imposter syndrome occasionally. It pops up in lots of places. I almost didn't respond to this survey because it stressed senior leaders. And it took me a little bit. And I was like, wait a minute, I count. I report to a CEO. I help make big decisions. Like, yeah, I count. So I think that in and of itself to me was enough to say, oh yeah, okay, maybe I still have this. I think Magda, your point was really good about it's the learning and the experience and the comfort level. I sort of assume that everyone else has it a little more pulled together than I do, and I hold myself to a really high standard. And so anytime I'm starting something new, I'm like, they're going to figure out, I have no idea what I'm doing. And it is just trusting your gut and learning as much as you can, and getting in a groove. But I think there's actually a lot of men that experience imposter syndrome. They might not know the words for it or have been as accustomed to using it. But I think that's a common thing for people, especially high achieving, high performing people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we probably all have experienced it. But yeah, I agree, that kind of stat of 25% not experiencing it, I think is really fascinating. And I think there's probably quite a lot that we can learn from those individuals. Jill, how about yourself? Was this stat surprising to you?
Not surprising. I think it's pretty much what I expected. Again, maybe that 25% is a little higher. Maybe I'm in love with the 25%, whoever you are. And I was thinking about this because I just wrote an article about parenting a special needs child. And when I was writing that article, the term I used was out of my league, right? People were saying I was a great parent. I didn't feel like a great parent. I didn't know how to parent this child because there were so many things that I still had to learn, which is essentially the same thing. So I sort of tipped the tables and thought of it as a positive. Anytime I feel this way, I feel out of my league, that means that I'm learning how to be in a new league, right? So I've got leagues behind me. I've got tons of leagues behind me of things I've learned. So anytime I reach that point where I feel, maybe I'm not confident, it's something new, right, Hilary, somebody's gonna find me out that I don't know. You're not supposed to know, right? That's the whole thing about taking on challenges and learning new things. So if you can think of it as a positive, that feeling of being uncomfortable, that means it's the opportunity to learn and grow and, establish a new league.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've just kind of nicely brought me on to my next point, which is one of Rise's ambitions from this report is that we can develop some initiatives and programs of work to support more women into senior leadership roles. And so, that's our ultimate ambition, because we know that the statistics aren't there and the balance isn't there in terms of gender diversity at the moment. But I suppose, what do you think we need to do as an organisation from Rise's perspective to enable more women to not have that imposter syndrome? What kind of initiative, but kind of based on this, do you think we might be able to roll out? Jill, maybe we'll come back to you as a starting on that, and then Meghan will come on to you as well.
I think it's great to get uncomfortable. And so I was on a women's coaching seminar not too long ago, and they brought us into breakout sessions, right? And it's pretty uncomfortable when you're sitting in front of ladies you don't know and you're talking about things that are sort of challenging. But that was great because we sort of on purpose made ourselves uncomfortable in these situations and talked out loud about how it felt. So I feel like just more acknowledgement of what this is. Sometimes I think people hear imposter syndrome and they get scared to say that, they have any part of that. So labeling it something else, right? Not feeling comfortable with what's going on. I think that might help.
Yeah. The labeling is interesting, isn't it? And language around it. Yeah. So Megan, how about you? You're our North American co-chair for RISE. Do you have any thoughts on kind of what we could do with this statistic to kind of help more women get into leadership positions and not have this imposter syndrome that we found does, and I think we're not surprised by it, but it does exist.
Right. I think going along with what Jill just said, I think if we could hold some more workshops, for me personally, hearing other women talk about them feeling this way, especially women in higher level positions or talking about the beginning of their career or how they've overcome it, it helps me so much to be like, okay, not everybody has it together all the time and other people feel this way. I think if we could run some workshops and do maybe smaller group breakouts, so it's not 40 people hearing you express this concern or this fear, but if we could do like smaller focused groups, I mean, I think people will be more willing to share, right? And I always benefit from hearing your stories, and I think that might be helpful for some of our members.
Yeah. Yep, that's a really good point. So I'm writing loads of notes down as we go, by the way.
I'm writing notes too.
Yeah, go on, Magda. Yeah, please. Yeah.
I do want to add to this one. I definitely agree with the workshops. We recently actually had a workshop with an expert, Stefan Lewis, here at Deluxe, and he was specifically talking about imposter syndrome. And what I really liked about, and I think a lot of our women on this call from Deluxe would probably say the same thing, he did provide a lot of sort of recipes for how to deal with various types of imposter syndrome, because there's a lot of shades to it, right? It's not just, do I feel good enough? There is a whole lot of perfectionism level, et cetera, et cetera. And there are definitely techniques that women, everybody, could really tap into to help themselves. And it will be a steady process because things don't change overnight.
Yeah, totally. And that's the point of the report as well, is that actually it enables companies to think about initiatives that they can deliver internally as well to their workforce to support them. It's not, obviously RISE is going to be looking at, but we want companies to be looking at the report and the recommendations and the findings as well.
I mean, can we also take that internally and challenge ourselves as people, as leaders, to talk about it authentically, right? The part of being your authentic self and authentic leader, we don't have to wait for a workshop. If you're maybe you're not comfortable sharing it in front of your whole team, but if you're in a one-on-one situation and someone is struggling, you can share that part of yourself as well without feeling vulnerable.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, Hilary, isn't it? Particularly when we're working with younger women within the industry who are kind of at the start of their careers or just in kind of maybe coming towards the middle management roles, that actually the imposter syndrome does exist. So actually, it's in trying to find tools and ways to support them to get to that 25%. As you said, I think all of you said that we're all in love with that 25%. So it's about enabling and supporting our younger females within our organizations to support them to feel comfortable to have that conversation around it, and that actually this is a natural process, and hopefully we can work towards all of us and having that.
Start that dialogue, and maybe that person, maybe someone just needs a stretch project. Maybe someone just needs to know that they're not alone. That there's a lot of power that comes from opening that conversation up.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's kind of also creating that safe space so you feel comfortable asking questions. I know I feel that way. Like if I am in an environment where I'm like, I don't actually know the answer, but I want to ask this question. If that environment feels safe, I will ask it, right? But I have been in situations where I'm like, I can't ask this question because I think I should probably know the answer, although no one's ever given me the answer and I've never seen information on it. I'm assumed to know the answer when you step into some of these roles. But I think, if I felt me personally safe for asking those questions, I'm going to benefit and those around me are going to benefit. So I think as an organization, as RISE, as we run these workshops, I think figuring out how to create those safe spaces is important.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Well, look, let's move on to our next finding, which I'm so fascinated by this one. So the majority of our respondents at 66% said that they are risk takers. I don't think I've ever thought about leadership in general, whether that's male or female or other genders, around risk taking I haven't really thought about it in this way, and that actually that might be a quality that we might want to look at. Jill, did this surprise you, or was it, or not? Actually, does it kind of feel natural that actually leaders might be more
I think
tuned to it?
initially when I saw it, I was surprised. And then I thought about, wait a minute, this is about women in kind of the tech space, which is a risk in and of itself, honestly. I mean, when I say that, it's like, we're not as common as we want to be yet. So going into that space means that you're kind of a risk taker at heart. And when we talk about like how we deal with risk taking and what makes up this 66%, I think, you grow over time and you get your confidence. I think what I learned over the course of time was, especially with a large team, we would pilot things, right? Which is risk taking, but it allows, when I say pilot, okay, well, let's pilot that. You're sort of carte blanche to make mistakes, right? We know this is imperfect. We're going to pilot it because we want your feedback. We're not saying we're the experts on it. We don't want this to be perfect. We're on purpose saying we're giving ourselves some leeway to make this and refine this process. I think doing that sort of helped alleviate all the panic by my team and by me, setting a precedence that we're going to release something and it's going to be amazing. No, we're going to pilot this and we want your feedback. That allows for kind of everybody to take a deep breath and fail and feel okay about it, and then to iterate and make it better. It also kind of empowered the team and made them come to me with more innovative ideas because they felt safe in this space to be able to challenge themselves to do new things.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, because obviously the flip coin of this is failure, isn't it? It totally is. And actually, so we've not looked at that. We focus on the risk bit, but actually, of course, they're so in tune with each other. Hilary, how about yourself? Did this surprise you at all?
I think, I'm sort of in line with Jill on this, that technology, especially sort of cutting edge technology as our industry is evolving, inherently includes more risk. I think the cloud technologies and SaaS offerings have allowed us to fail quickly, right? You try something, stand it up, low cost, you don't have to get sign-offs from everyone up the entire chain. You get to try something and quickly pull back if it's not working. So I think that is inching up. I also think that, Carrie, you were saying, I think it was Carrie, women in technology. So you could look at this question from two different ways. One is, am I taking risks in my career as an individual, right? Am I defining a path for myself? Am I pushing myself out of my comfort zone? And am I helping my team do that? I think we are seeing a lot more leaders, and I think we can continue as leaders to do this, be really transparent about failure is okay because it teaches you a lesson. Failing fast, of learning from mistakes and owning up to them, not sweeping it under the rug, celebrating the good things that come from there. So I guess I'm surprised that it's on the trajectory that it seems to be. I would assume, 5 years ago, it would not even have been close to that.
Yeah.
But we've been going through a lot in the last few years. So.
Yeah, just a little bit. And do you think, obviously that's all in the workplace and the culture that we work in, and obviously both of you are totally right around the fact that we work in a technology industry kind of automatically probably means that we have to be risk taking. But I'm quite interested in how we enable a risk taking approach in younger women so that they feel confident going forwards in the industry, and that actually that might be a quality that recruiters might need to look at when they're going through an interview process. Do you think that happens now, Hilary, or is it something that we need to be looking at more as an industry when we're supporting women coming through?
I don't think it's as explicit as it could be. I think that was a really good point. I happened to see maybe a little bit of a preview of the report. I thought that was a lovely sort of question that came out. Can you tactically hire for more traits that are more resilient for this moment in the industry? I think probably. I think you can also coach people, though. So if someone isn't inherent, we have enough problem with making sure our workforces are diverse, because maybe there's not a talent pool, or maybe there's an education gap in certain areas. I wouldn't add it as a disqualifier at this point, because I do think it can be changed with really good leadership and transparency. But it's certainly something to think about, right? If you're looking at a couple different candidates and comparing them to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, Magda, how about you? Do you think we need to be looking at this a little bit more than we have done before? And maybe, as Hilary said, making it a little bit more explicit in the way that we're working with younger women, or looking at that kind of skill set and, I suppose, attitude when looking at kind of recruitment processes?
I have to say that in my experience, in my interviews, I've never asked a candidate about, are you a risk taker, to be honest. Maybe because we've, it's just really not sort of, I guess, on the agenda, or a thing that so far in our recruitment, we've been really searching for the most part. We're thinking more, are you more of an independent thinker? Are you a critical thinker? How does that manifest for you? But I think where the industry is right now, with the innovation and with such of entrepreneurial nature within the company, where we all have to kind of reinvent ourselves, that question should definitely have a place to some extent. And how do we ask that question, right? I think saying, are you a risk taker, could lead the candidate onto different paths. So maybe kind of help them also understand what we're looking for, right? What kind of scenarios, whether, you are more of, do you have an entrepreneurial spirit? Would you want to lead a project? As Jill said, is there a pilot? How would you lead a pilot? How do you learn from failure? Do you think failure is a bad thing? Do you think, how do you operate within a very fast-paced environment, where you have to take fast decisions, where you have to pivot? How do you engage with people around you in the company, but also externally? Are you able to sort of, do the quick thinking evaluation, and then how do you then lead your teams in that environment? So I think there's definitely room to asking these questions in a more tactical way, and that's really fit for purpose.
Yeah, and it would be great to kind of dig down a bit further. Maybe that's something that we can look at Rise. There was so much information that you just covered there, just in terms of how we do kind of approach and work with younger people to enable them to feel comfortable having these conversations and understanding what, as you said, making them understand what you as a company might be looking for, and kind of how you build that skill set up and that kind of approach, I suppose. Meghan, how about you? Are you a risk taker? Are you?
I was really thinking about this. I would not consider myself personally a risk taker, and professionally, I think it all depends on if I feel safe making that choice, right? Even when I was approached about, we were kicking off the Rise North America chapter, Serena and I decided to do it together, which we knew, I wouldn't say it's a risk, but it was starting something new from scratch here in North America, but we had the support of you and Sadie, right? So, and like obviously the UK chapter. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I'm much of a risk. I don't know. I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but
yeah, I think maybe if you think about it, you probably find that you are. I think maybe because it's framed as risk, I think it feels quite
risk.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of what Magda was saying. It's like, if I was asked in an interview, are you a risk taker? I think it depends on the position, but if it was reframed in, like I liked how you said, how do you learn from failure? Or do you have an entrepreneurial spirit? I think those are easier lobs over, right? Like me personally, I would probably respond easier to those questions rather than a recruiter or a potential manager being like, are you a risk taker? Because it depends on the position, but I wouldn't want my potential manager to think that I'm not, steadfast. I'm not, dependable. I don't want them to think that I'm just going to do things that aren't in the benefit of the company. So I think it would be, if your intentions are pure and you're doing risks that you think are, going to benefit your team or your company, that is very different than if I was my individual self saying, I'm just going to take this risk on behalf of the company if it wasn't calculated. So I don't know. The word risk is an interesting word.
Yeah, and it is around language as well, isn't it? Absolutely. And I think the word risk, I think what I found interesting about it as well is that I think, as you were kind of hinting, I think it has a lot of negative connotations sometimes as well, actually. And that if somebody's a risk taker, then actually that's not necessarily a good thing. But actually, in this aspect is totally a positive thing. And actually you can see that embedded through the rest of the results and what that's led to. But yeah, that goodness, there's so many ways that we can be looking at this, I think, and understanding the value of risk and the value of having an attitude to embracing risk. And then also, as Jill and Hilary were talking about, the kind of the failure aspect that goes with that, and how we can kind of encourage that and support women kind of undertaking that and being comfortable with it as we go forwards. Okay, right, well, let's move on to our next slide, which is around mentoring and board representation. So we found in the report that nearly 30% of our respondents had sat at a board level and also had mentoring, which you can see from the graph. So basically implying that there's a significant increase in the likelihood of board membership for those who have engaged in mentoring programs and had that kind of mentoring support. And for me, this was quite reassuring, because I'm sure a lot of you know that RISE runs a mentoring program in North America and also in APAC and in the UK. So this has always, for me, been quite a central part of our work. And I see year on year the impact that mentoring can have on women in all sorts of different ways, from confidence, which I think sometimes we think it's a really simple thing, confidence, but actually it's not, it's really complex. But from confidence right through to progression and promotions and job opportunities, and just understanding kind of your pathway within the industry. Like I see it, as I say, on a yearly basis, the impact of mentoring. But this statistic was brilliant to see that actually that mentoring can then really tangibly lead to board representation as well, like having that concrete link between the two. I was delighted about, because we know that actually there's a lack of female representation at board level still, and particularly within kind of the technology and engineering type of roles that sit within those boards. Hilary, have you had a mentor before? And if not, would you like to have had a mentor? Do you think that would have supported you if you hadn't had one? Or
yeah, I've been lucky. I've had a number of mentors, and maybe have a number of mentors officially and unofficially. Discovery actually had a wonderful internal mentorship program that was formal. And then there were other sort of relationships that I sought out or was introduced by someone else that I've benefited from greatly in my career. You know, that can be a scary thing, starting that conversation, but even mentoring can take many forms, even if it's just a coffee catch up, right? And you're talking about careers. It doesn't have to be this big, long thing. And you don't have to go to someone and say, you know, Carrie, would you please mentor me? And we'll talk every week for the next 6 years and it'll be fine. You know, it's a relationship that you're building, and hopefully you're giving as much of your perspective to your mentor as you're getting from them. But absolutely. And I think that it has been instrumental in how I've moved through my career.
That's interesting. And why do you think it's been so instrumental? Because of the advice and support that you get? Like, is it?
I think advice, support, sounding board, different perspective.
Yeah.
You know, people operating in different organizations at different levels, able to say, look, you're really focused on this one thing, and that is a great idea, but maybe think bigger. Or, hey, this is a problem that I have that I wasn't aware of, right? And just kind of fitting all the pieces together, knowing how everyone works. I think through that, I then had mentors become champions and suggest me for things, or put my name forward for things, or pull me into a special project, or even just invite me to a table, to a meeting. And then all of that builds on itself.
Yeah. Jill, how about you? Have you had mentoring before?
I have, definitely. Same with Hilary, some formal and informal. I think one thing that I've really tried to do, I call it the chalkboard of life, where I have the don't do this and the do that sides of my chalkboard, where every day you have the chance to learn from people around you. The don't do this side of my chalkboard is full. I have a lot on that side, but the do this side isn't that full. So as I go through my day, you know, whether it's my peers or somebody above me, or just, you know, anybody I meet, if there's something that they've done that feels like, I should do, like, that is an awesome, I want to put that in my toolkit of things that I want to have Jill P do, versus I'm never going to say that to somebody.
Yeah.
So I think that formal mentoring is great. Then that informal, what can you learn from everybody around you, is also a really great way to sort of self-analyze the person that you want to be, and adding that into kind of your criteria for what fills you up.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I need that board, Jill. You need to you need to send that over to me. I need to get one of those. Magda, how do you think, like based on this statistic, how do you think companies across the industry should respond to this? Because I know many companies have mentoring programs, reverse mentoring, straightforward mentoring, but a lot of companies still don't. Do you think that that's something that we should be really encouraging now, having seen this statistic and the direct link between females specifically kind of having mentoring and then getting onto boards?
I would have to say that, yes, I think that the companies should be doing more and more of this and creating programs around coaching, mentoring for women, not just for women, but just, for other employees within the company. Focusing on the women specifically, I think that those programs really are very, very scarce, to be honest, within the companies. And it's really, really important to have that sort of formal mentoring, I think, implemented, a program that would help women understand what to expect from mentorship, right? I think we're talking about, there's formal, informal ways of getting mentored, and you just really gain a different perspective. People that you talk to can help you sort of get out of your own way a lot of the times, because you're just so focused and it's like, this is who I am, and I'm proud of being who I am. But let's look at something like maybe there is an opposite way of looking at things, and you're just really shifting perspective and reframe your thinking. That kind of helps you, see things differently, getting you out of the comfort zone, and ultimately pushing you forward, hopefully, right? Formal mentorship also will help you progress in your career faster. And as one of you said that we had a little sneak preview of some other statistics that are coming up in this report. And it was really fascinating to see that 5 women who are mentored progress faster 5 times more than those who don't. And that was just really amazing. So the importance of having a sounding board and a person who can help you put some kind of a plan, for yourself around your ambitions, around your goals, around who you want to be doing your job is very important. And I would really love to see companies putting that in place more.
Yeah, me too, absolutely. And I think, the significance of this, I don't think can be underestimated. As I said earlier, we know that C-level representation has a lack of female representation at C-level. So I should rephrase that. Like we've seen that clearly, and Rise did a survey with the IBM last year that totally reflected that in the findings as well. So we know, and we can see now this direct correlation. So if we're going to change that C-level board representation statistics, and this is like a really clear way of enabling that to happen and to have that more gender diversity at C-level and on boards. Meghan, I'm going to come to you now, because you're currently a mentor on the Rise North American program. I'd love to know how you've seen changes in your mentee, or just the mentees in general that you've been working with across the North American program. Because as we've all been chatting about, we know that it can have a massive impact, and then obviously lead on to, as we've seen, board representation C-level. But on the ground, how are you seeing the program work for you at the moment and your mentee?
I'm so glad I decided to be a mentor in this program. And this probably could tie a little bit back to imposter syndrome, because I almost didn't apply to be a mentor because I was like, I don't know if I'm high enough in my career to mentor somebody else. And I really talked it through with the board, and I have really enjoyed the experience, so much so, and I'm getting so much out of it being a mentor. And I connect with my mentee every week that I think I'm going to apply to be a mentee next year. I mean, honestly, it's such a collaboration, and I've learned so much, and I've learned so much from her, and being able to talk through some ideas with her and see her implement those and then come back and be like, this worked, or this is really important, or thank you for helping me talk through these things. It's been so beneficial. And to kind of go along with what everyone else has been saying is, I've never had a formal mentor, but I think I've had so many important allies in my career, and champion is a great word. I've had so many champions in my career that have put me up for jobs, brought me to other companies. They've followed my career, they've helped me, they've coached me. And I can't remember who said it, but I think sometimes getting out of your own way is so important. And when you have an ally or a champion, and I have benefited from this, where I'm like, I don't know if I'm right for this. And someone is, well, I see it this way. And they see you in a different way than you see yourself. That has been so crucial for me to be like, okay, you're right. You know what? I can do this. Maybe this is how I present myself, but internally I'm not feeling as confident. And when a champion or an ally says that back to you and they're like, you got this, you could do this. It is so important. So I think this mentoring section is just, it is so valuable. And I would love to be, I mean, I would love to benefit from this at my own companies. I think it's so important for companies to roll this out.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, as I say, it's been a central part of our work over the last few years. So yeah, I was really delighted to see this. Right, let's move on to the final central theme that we're going to look at today from the RISE report, which is on education. So this stat didn't surprise me, but I think it has some complexities around it, which is 77% had reached a degree level, with only 8% having studied engineering or technical roles. So not surprising, but disappointing, I think, particularly when you look at the subject areas and the kind of lack of women that have said that they focus specifically on engineering and technology degrees. And then also we know from a diversity perspective more generally that our kind of access to university courses and the funding that goes with that is really challenging. And actually when you look at ethnic representation or socio-economic representation at degree level, then actually they tend to have lower statistics. So there's some kind of wider, I suppose, intersectionality around this particular statistic, and the report goes into this in a little bit of more detail, and I'm sure Daisy can chat about it as well if anybody asks a question around that. But I suppose I'm also interested in education in general at the moment for the industry, and what education we want young people to be coming through with, and based particularly on this statistic. Do we still think that kind of degree level university qualification is critical to entering the industry, or not? And actually, if we want more representation, do we need to kind of lose that as we go forward so that we can be more inclusive as a sector going forwards? Jill, what are your thoughts on this?
Like, this is a tough one, and I did think a little bit about this one, because the gap that exists, I think, is in knowing what your strengths are, right? If we take IT as an example, and people think of IT that are younger as like coding, and there's so much more to it than coding, right? In order for anything in IT to be successful, there have to be BA and project managers and all sorts of roles that aren't just IT-based roles. But I think the education around what does this mean? What does technology mean? What does engineering mean? And being more concrete about what those roles are, and then helping younger people identify what their strengths are. I was surprised about a year ago when I took the Clifton Strengths test, and what I got back were words about me and my skills that are my soft skills, my best skills. And I'd never seen it that way before. And it made me feel really proud of kind of my best skills, and also acknowledge that I had some things that were important that I really didn't value that much, that were unique about me. So I think trying to help the younger kids kind of growing up in the world to understand what they're good at, and then having, that great big list of like, here's all the skills, and based on your strengths, these are some of the things that you might want to consider, and then guiding them through that process, having them talk to people that do those things so that they can understand more what that role is about.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree with that more. And I think the more that we can encourage that at younger age, the more we're going to be more open to them in the industry, and that we can spot that talent coming through.
And then I think depending on, where their strengths are, they may or may not, gain from being going for a big education. They might be more skilled at doing something that's a 2-year degree instead of a 4-year degree, or
not a degree at all. I mean, separate to this, RISE is running some workshops under its Rise Up Academy program. So, and I particularly been on the road over the last month working with 9-year-olds through to 18-year-olds, and what I saw was absolutely that kind of traditional academic paper-based education is not I mean, it has a brilliant place, but is not always the route to encouraging more diversity into our industry, without a doubt. So yeah, so I'm fascinated by this statistic, and also how we approach education and qualifications going forwards to ensure that we're more inclusive and diverse and have that.
I just want to add that I only have a 2-year degree. I only have a junior college degree, and that was from Kansas, which means nothing, right?
Yeah,
basically. Yeah. So it was all about mentoring and learning and growing and continuing to sort of learn as I go to be able to achieve what I did, and then taking the risk to leave. So
yeah. Hilary, were you going to jump in there?
Yeah, I think, the conventional wisdom that I've heard over the years is that a 2 or 4 year, but generally speaking, a 4-year degree isn't necessarily about the discipline, but it's proving the critical thinking skills and the ability to organize and work within a construct, right? And that is probably a true statement, but I don't know that in at least the educational environment in the US, that burdening someone with that level of financial debt, if their path isn't quite clear, or just to prove that they can learn, seems really, really unfair and biased. And I think we're seeing this rise of nano degrees, code academy classes, free training that allow people to incrementally test what they're interested in. I mean, how many of us have known or been someone that goes to a university and is like, I think I'm going to major in this, and oh, I hate it, actually, it's the worst thing ever, I'm going to switch. That's a lot of wasted time. It's a lot of wasted money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there are these in between things that people can try on and move forward slowly. Jill, maybe proving their skills or not, their aptitude or not, having people starting younger in school too, high school, middle school, saying, why don't you check this out? Try out this. Your brain seems to work this way.
Yeah, totally. And do you think then, Hilary, following on from that, the industry needs to kind of perhaps relook at the way it views qualifications, specifically at degree level, so that we can reach those young people that don't have that their pathway isn't that? Because for me, that's the way that we're going to create a more inclusive and diverse workforce.
I think everyone needs to rethink it, but certainly our industry. I think there's a little bit of possibly intellectual snobbery, right, from people who have gotten to technical roles with very high, shiny, fancy educations or hard-won knowledge. And there's a little bit of like, well, they can't possibly understand unless they've reached these benchmarks or had this much experience. And I think that's unfair, and it does a disservice to all of us.
Yeah, totally. Meghan, you were nodding away there as Hilary was talking.
I think along the way, definitely, the question is what role education will play in, a woman leader trying to get to the board level. I think really the question for me is what kind of competencies and abilities and skill set is really required to be at the board level, right? Because what we're seeing here in the results is that 8% of us women studied engineering and technology. Are those actually skill set required to be at the board level, right? Where does that formal education really lead you to begin with? I've read somewhere that 30% of Fortune 500 CEOs only have MBAs, and that's such a that kind of goes to show, like, do you really need a formal MBA to reach that level? And maybe it's really a supplementary education that you need to get. But what's more important is the expertise and the ability, the practical application within your industry, that gives you the ability to make certain decisions that are required at that level. I don't hold an MBA degree. I'm trained in linguistics, but at this operational level, I am asked to make decisions that are sort of, requiring me to research, learn on my own, the MBA levels to subject matter. So that's what I'm doing. And it's really a question of what do we need to know to be at that level, and then working towards that either through practical application, taking supplementary courses and getting the education in a way. Does it have to be formal? I don't think so.
Yeah,
But it definitely helps.
go on,
to
sorry, Hilary.
Well, Magda, you made a great point there, because that you can teach yourself some things, you can expose yourselves to situations, but I think this is where you go back to a strong network, so strong mentoring and a strong network, because a lot of people not only take from grad school their MBA, but they take a network of people that they can call on later. And so if you are building that organically throughout your career, you're further ahead, and that is also something that will lead you to board seats, right? It's who you know, how you're supporting them, how you're representing yourself, how you're helping in your industry.
I think yeah, totally. And I think for me, we have to start at a younger age. We have to be engaging with, you know, children, like right from, as I say, from 8 and 9 right through to 15, 16, 17, 18, and providing them with clear information and guidance about the different pathways that are available to them. Degree being a really valuable route, but also these other routes that we've talked about. And that network that you've mentioned, Hilary, absolutely. Like we need to make sure that network's available to all, don't we? That actually it's not just as a result of one particular pathway, that you've got these multiple streams of pathways that are all valuable, but provide different things depending on what your skill sets and attitudes and aims are. But that network needs to be spread across all of them, right? We want to make sure that there's, you know, equal access to all, don't we? Yeah, my goodness, there's so much interesting stuff here.
I think there's also a lot of things that just can't be taught at school that you learn from experience, right? If I consider all the mergers and acquisitions that I've been a part of in my life, you know, there's no way to go to school and learn how to do an M&A. From a technology perspective, right? You've got this complement of software and hardware over here. Same with this company. Your job is to merge those together. There's no class for that, right? So learning how to do that and do it well, and just keep iterating on your process and getting it down. Same thing with being able to take a 400-page document and synthesize it into 2 slides that summarize what the project is and the costs. That's a skill, right? And that's a learned skill over time that comes just from being exposed to your chalkboard of life, right? The people that are doing it well. And then those documents you look at that you're like, not good. So, you know, there's a whole complement of skills that come along with leadership and growing that you have to take in from your environment and what's going on around you, and that can make you a lot stronger.
Do you think we should be trying to teach them of that, though, Joe? Like coming
Absolutely.
back, yeah.
Absolutely.
So although it comes with experience and knowledge, and you know, undertaking different roles and progressing through your career, are some of those things that should we be integrating them at a younger age and saying this is the kind of thing you might be dealing with as part of your career? Like
even just the exposure to the conversation, like the M&A thing that I just talked about,
yeah,
and teaching people, and I'm actually doing that. This is a big part of what I do right now, is, you know, taking a lot of information and then synthesizing it down into a small document. And I had one of the gentlemen I'm working with, he goes, I don't understand how you can do this. You can be on a meeting and 30 minutes later, you've synthesized everything into this like pretty visual that captured everything. He's like, I would spend a week doing that. And that's a skill that you learn over time by listening and figuring out how to represent it. Yeah. And it's key to being, you know, a good leader, so that you're representing your team and, you know, cutting through all the BS.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I could talk all day about education. So I am going to have to stop, because I think it's fascinating. And I think there are so many different conversations that we need to have specifically around qualifications and what we want to have in the industry. What qualifications do we want to see for different roles and for different areas? And then also, as you've all touched upon, around the skill sets and attitudes and what else we need to be teaching alongside what we're already currently doing, and where do we need to focus to ensure that we can be more inclusive as an industry, and also communicate those pathways. Because obviously, like, degrees have a really valuable place, and so do MBAs as you progress. Like, without a doubt, they offer something really, you know, specific and positive. But also, we want to create these other pathways, don't we, that can kind of focus on different areas and provide a different pathway for young people coming through. I'm very aware that we're rapidly running out of time. So I'm just before we close, just to say that the official launch of the report is going to be on Thursday. So everybody that's attended, I know this, thank you so much, everybody, for all of you for joining. There's over 40 of you online. So thank you so much for joining us. Before we wrap up, please do pop some questions in the chat box if you want to ask any of the panelists or anything, or Daisy, the author of the report, and Steffi and Peggy, who are the researchers, please do pop them in the chat box and I'll ask them. But just to say, yeah, the report will be launched officially on Thursday, and I will send you all a copy of that report, but it'll also be available on our website at that link. So I will stop sharing now, but Jill, Magda, Meghan and Hilary, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely fascinating. And as I said at the top, like, we've got so many more findings in the report that we've not managed to cover today, but you know, it's a 40-page in-depth document that will kind of that's got some more central themes, but obviously kind of breaks down those 4 ones that we've covered today in a lot more detail. I know there's been some chat going on in the box with Tamara picking up on the risk-taking conversation, saying sometimes risk-taking is about applying for a position that stretches your skill set, and from a hiring perspective, recognizing this and being open to candidates who are embracing new challenges. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Tamara's just put on another question. Does anyone on this call have an assistant? I've been puzzling recently over the loss of an assistant position as another opportunity for mentorship. Ooh,
Great point.
Great point, Hilary. What do you think on that?
No assistant. But it's a really good point.
No, and I don't now. I did have an assistant when I worked at Discovery, but she was shared. And honestly, I tried, like, she was always pushing me to try to have her do more. But I always felt like, you know, the less I have her do, the better off I am, because it frees up her time. So it's definitely beneficial. I mean, there are several things where I was just like, I'm just going to give this to Jillian because I've had a day, right? And we used to call them the keys to the castle, right? Your executive assistants, when it comes to pushing out change, you know, to your executives, they're amazing, right? Yeah. And there are good ones and there are ones that aren't, and the good ones are gold.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think there's any other questions that have come through. No, just
Carrie, I wanted to thank you all for undertaking this, because I think it's going to be so important for early careerists to read and maybe help design a path. I think also for leadership to look and say, how can we be more inclusive or change our behavior? So I think it's fascinating, and thank you.
Oh no, well, thank you, and thank you to everybody who completed the online survey back in earlier this year, and to Peggy and Steffi who created that survey. Actually, it was a conversation with Peggy who initially was like, actually, why don't we try and look at this and develop some understanding? So actually, huge thanks to them to kind of getting the ball rolling with it, and to Daisy to put the flesh on the bones and writing the report. It's been a journey of love trying to get this up and running over the last 6 months, and hopefully, yeah, absolutely, the findings will be helpful for companies across the sector, and the initiatives and processes and systems that we might want to put in place as an industry to try and change things and to see more representation at senior leadership. Like, that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Ultimately, RISE is trying to have, you know, gender diversity across the board and have that balance. But I think for me, there are some really interesting findings in this report that can enable us and direct us and support us into putting these, you know, whether it's initiatives or programs or workshops. You know, we've covered all sorts of different things today that can really help us make those changes and to support younger women specifically coming through. So so thank you so much. Thank you to Jill, to Meghan, Hilary and Magda. Thank you so much for joining us and chatting through your own experiences and the findings, and to all of you who have joined us this afternoon here in the UK, but all sorts of different times around the world. As I said, I will email out the report to you on Thursday, and it will be online as well. And yeah, I look forward to working with you all in the future, and please do stay in touch, and please do drop me a line if you've got any questions about the report going forward. Thank you so much, everybody, and take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.